It was supposed to be a new beginning. The sun dipped low behind the bare oaks, lining the quiet neighborhood of Rosewood Heights, painting the sky in burnt orange and lavender. The moving van was parked awkwardly across the driveway, its hazard lights blinking in rhythm with my heartbeat. I stepped out of our silver SUV, my boots crunching against a mix of gravel and fallen leaves, as I looked up at the two-story colonial house my husband had just revealed as our forever home. "Surprise," Nate said behind me, beaming with pride. "Welcome home, Lauren." I wanted to feel excited, to jump into his arms, squealing like the girls in home renovation shows do when they see granite countertops and farmhouse sinks. But I didn't. I felt weird. That was the only word I could think of. A low-level static in my chest, like I was forgetting something important. Nate wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me close as we walked toward the front door. "It's everything we talked about, right? Quiet street, big yard, close to the school district." I forced a smile. "Yeah, it's great." The air smelled of pine and fresh paint, with an undertone of something I couldn't quite place, like old perfume, maybe? Familiar, in a way that made my stomach tighten. I brushed it off as nerves. After all, moving into a new house, especially when your husband buys as a surprise, wasn't something that happened every day. Inside, the house was pristine. Freshly painted walls, modern lighting, hardwood floors polished to a reflective gleam. Nate gave me a tour like a real estate agent. "This is the kitchen, look. Double oven like you always wanted. Here's the den, picture us having movie nights here." There was no denying it. He had thought of everything. But that smell lingered in the back of my throat. "You said the house was just listed last week?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He hesitated.
"Yeah."
"Came up last minute through a friend of a friend." Lucky, right? Nate had always been spontaneous, whisking me away to Vegas on a whim, buying a motorcycle after a weekend trip with his buddies. But a house? That felt big. Too big for him to do alone. "Did you see it before you bought it?" His eyes darted away for a split second. "Sort of. I saw enough to know it was right for us." I nodded, but my mind replayed that flicker of hesitation like a skipped record. It wasn't enough to accuse. Not yet. That night, while unpacking boxes in the bedroom, I found a small jewelry box tucked in the back of a drawer. It was old, velvet fraying at the corners, and inside was a delicate silver bracelet engraved with the name Samantha. A name I hadn't heard in a while. My stomach dropped. Nate's ex-girlfriend, Samantha Taylor. They dated for 4 years before me, off and on, until she moved out of state and vanished from our conversations. I hadn't thought about her in forever. And yet here her name was etched into silver, sitting in a drawer in our house. I carried it downstairs like it was radioactive, holding it between 2 fingers. "Hey," I said, trying to sound normal. "Found this upstairs. Any idea who Samantha is?" He turned quickly, too quickly.
"What? Oh."
That must have been from the previous owner. Probably their daughter or something. He reached for it, but I held on to it for a second longer. "Weird they'd leave something so personal behind," I said, watching his face. He shrugged, his jaw tight. "I'll toss it." I nodded slowly and handed it over. But I didn't miss the way he slipped it into his back pocket instead of the trash. The rest of the night, my brain wouldn't stop. My chest felt tight like I was breathing through a straw. There was no solid proof, just a weird smell, an old bracelet, and a flicker of hesitation. But it felt like being on the edge of a cliff with your toes over the ledge. Something was coming. I could feel it. Later, when Nate went out to pick up pizza, I wandered through the house alone. The walls creaked, as old houses do, and shadows stretched long in the corners. I walked into the master closet, a space far too big for just me. The scent hit me again, floral, powdery, like rose water and jasmine. And then I noticed it. On the top shelf, behind a box of Nate's ties, sat a framed photo turned face down. I pulled it out, heart pounding. It was Nate and Samantha standing in front of this very house. Same porch, same door. Her hand was on his chest, smiling like she belonged there. My ears rang. I put the photo back exactly as I found it and closed the door softly. When Nate returned, I didn't say a word, just smiled.
Just like he did.
Because I needed to know what the hell was going on, and I wasn't going to ask. Not yet. The next morning started with a fake smile and 2 cups of coffee. Nate was already downstairs when I walked into the kitchen, humming to himself while buttering toast. The smell of cinnamon creamer and eggs filled the space, but that same floral scent hung faintly in the air, rose water and jasmine, lingering like a whisper. It was subtle, but it didn't belong to me. "Sleep okay?" he asked, not looking up.
Yeah.
Took a while to adjust, I said, sipping my coffee. He didn't ask me why I'd been up past 2 a.m. pacing quietly in the hallway, or why the master closet door was slightly ajar when he'd shut it earlier. He just continued humming. Something old. Something off. After he left for work, I opened his laptop. I knew the password. It was still our anniversary date, 0419. He hadn't changed it. That meant something, didn't it? I wasn't looking to spy. I was looking to breathe again. I needed reassurance that this wasn't as insane as it felt. But reassurance didn't come. I searched Samantha in his emails. Result: 24 messages. My hands went cold. The most recent one was from just 3 weeks ago. Subject line: need to talk about the house. I clicked.
Hey.
I don't think she'll suspect anything if we make it look like it just went on the market. Just don't say anything dumb when she moves in. I'll handle it. We had an agreement, remember? Samantha. I stared at the screen, my chest hollowing out. Agreement? Handle what? My fingers trembled as I clicked on the next few. They were mostly short, often one-liners, mostly from her. I scrolled up further. The thread started months ago, way before he ever mentioned moving. He had lied. Blatantly. And not just about the house. About her. I closed the laptop slowly and sat on the edge of the couch, clutching the cushion like it might keep me grounded. I wasn't crazy. Something was very wrong.
But still, what exactly was going on?
Why involve her? And why keep me in the dark? I decided to call the realtor. The name on the mailbox flyer from yesterday read, Whitney Dawson Realty. I Googled the number and dialed. Whitney Dawson Real Estate. This is Shelby speaking. Hi, Shelby. I'm calling about a property recently purchased on Cedar Lane. I just had a couple of questions about the listing timeline. There was a pause. I don't see anything under that street in our recent listings. What's the house number? 326 Cedar Lane. Another pause. Typing sounds. I'm sorry, ma'am. That address was never listed through us. Are you sure it's our sign? I looked out the window at the flyer tucked in our mailbox. It says Whitney Dawson. That must have been an old sign, or someone reusing our branding. We haven't handled anything on that street in at least 6 months. My mouth went dry. Thanks, I said and hung up. So, the house wasn't just a surprise. It was off-record. Quiet. Quiet enough for a private arrangement. My stomach twisted. The rest of the day blurred. Laundry, dishes, mindless tasks, but my brain spun in loops. I kept going over that email. She won't suspect anything. What wouldn't I suspect? That evening, as we sat down to eat leftover Thai food on the couch, Nate passed me the soy sauce and smiled. You're quiet today. Just tired, I lied. He nodded. Well, good thing we're settled now. We can finally start fresh. Start fresh in a house you secretly bought with your ex? I looked at him and tried to find the man I married. His eyes were the same hazel flecked with green. His laugh still had that nasal squeak at the end. But something had changed. Or maybe it had always been there, and I just hadn't looked close enough. Later that night, I snuck out of bed and went down to the garage. I needed evidence. Proof. My instincts were screaming, and I had learned a long time ago, back when my father had an affair that unraveled our family, to listen when something felt off. In the garage, I opened the cabinet where Nate stored important files. Birth certificates. Car titles. And there, in a manila folder labeled Home Purchase 326 Cedar, were the papers. And her name. Samantha Taylor. Co-signer. My breath caught in my throat. The folder slipped from my hands, papers scattering like dead leaves on the concrete floor. Suddenly, I heard a creak from the top of the garage stairs. I froze. Lauren. Nate's voice, groggy. I quickly gathered the papers, shoved them back into the folder, and slammed the cabinet shut. Just getting water, I said, walking back up with a forced yawn. He blinked at me sleepily, but his eyes were sharp. You okay?
Fine, I said.
Go back to sleep. But I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, eyes wide, heart pounding, and I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just living in a house he bought behind my back. I was living inside a secret. And secrets, real ones, don't stay quiet for long. I started keeping a notebook. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. Details were starting to slip through the cracks of my sanity, and if I didn't write them down, I feared I'd forget. Or worse, question what was real. Tuesday, 3:14 p.m. Nate got a call from unknown. Stepped outside. Voice was low, tense. I heard. She doesn't know yet. Wednesday, 1:05 a.m. Woke up from a dream. I was locked in the closet. Someone else's perfume soaked the air. Thursday, 8:22 a.m. Drawer in guest room was open. I never opened it. Inside, lipstick. Shade. Crushed rose. Not mine. By Friday, I couldn't pretend anymore. I confronted Nate. It wasn't some dramatic showdown, no yelling, no smashed plates. Just two people sitting at a kitchen table while the dishwasher hummed behind them like background noise to a growing storm. I found the house documents, I said calmly, watching his reaction. He paused mid-sip of his coffee. Set the mug down. Blinked. What documents? I waited. The ones in the garage cabinet. The ones with her name on them. His expression shifted. Not surprise. Not fear. Just calculation. You went through my files? I almost laughed. That's your concern? She only co-signed because I needed a second name to secure the mortgage. Why her? He hesitated. Because she offered. It's not what you think. We're not. There's nothing between us. She knew a guy at the bank. It made the process faster. I stared at him. You didn't think I deserved to know that the house you moved us into was tied to your ex? It was temporary. I planned to refinance in my name once things settled down. I didn't tell you because I knew how you'd react. You mean honestly? He rubbed his face and stood up. Lauren, you're blowing this out of proportion.
No.
You made a home with her and dragged me into it. That night, we slept in silence, back to back. I stared at the wall until sunrise. The next few days, Nate played the perfect husband, made dinner, sent flowers, even started packing a bag for a weekend getaway to clear our heads. But I didn't trust it. I didn't trust him, especially not after I found the second phone. It was hidden in the back of his sock drawer, beneath a pair of old ski gloves. Burner. Basic model. Prepaid. I stared at it in my palm, like it was radioactive. There were only two contacts, Samantha and E. I clicked on the message thread with Samantha. She's starting to notice. Then act normal. Distract her. You promised we'd be done by April. I'm working on it. Don't push me. Done what? My pulse was racing so hard I had to sit down. I opened the thread with E. House is ready. Timeline moved up. You good to go? Almost. Few loose ends to tie. What house? Was there another one? That night, I decided to follow him. He said he was working late. I pretended to believe him, kissed him goodbye, and smiled. Then I waited 10 minutes, grabbed my keys, and trailed his car in my old Honda, headlights off. He didn't go to the office. He drove across town, to the other side of Cedar Lane, to a modern ranch-style home with a gravel driveway and thick hedges that shielded the windows. And she was there. Samantha. I watched her open the door and let him in. They embraced. Not friendly. Not awkward. Familiar. I took a photo. Then another. Then I started filming. My hands were shaking, but I needed the truth. Needed proof. Half an hour later, they came back out. He walked her to her car, kissed her on the cheek, then locked the house behind him. What was this? An affair? A setup? A double life? I didn't drive home. I parked in a Walgreens lot and cried for 20 minutes. Then I drove back to our house, no, her house, and paced the living room till 3 a.m. When Nate came home, he smelled like jasmine. The next morning I snapped. I didn't mean to. But when I opened the hall closet and saw a second set of toiletries, shampoo, hairbrush, and a robe I'd never seen before, I lost it. I threw the robe in his face. "Is she staying here?" I screamed. He looked cornered. "It's not what you think."
No.
"It's exactly what I think. You never bought this house for us, did you? You bought it for her." He finally cracked. "All right.
Yes.
She was supposed to live here. We were supposed to sell it and split the money after the renovations. It was an investment until things got complicated." "What kind of complicated?"
He stared at me for a long time.
Then walked past me without answering. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I walked down to the basement, and I found the final straw. In the far corner, behind boxes labeled holiday decor, was a crib, wrapped in plastic, still unassembled, but brand new. I peeled the receipt off the side. Delivery date, 3 weeks ago. I nearly dropped it. That's when I heard the footsteps above me. Quick, deliberate. The basement door creaked, then slammed. I ran upstairs, heart pounding. The door was locked from the outside. "Nate," I banged. "Open the door." Silence. Then his voice muffled. "You weren't supposed to find that." I stood at the top of the basement stairs, palms flat against the door, as Nate's words echoed in the silence. "You weren't supposed to find that." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My chest was too tight, as if the truth had sucked all the air out of the room. "Nate," I pounded harder. "Open this door right now." The lock clicked. I flung it open and stormed into the hallway, ready to scream, claw, beg, anything to shake the truth loose. He stood there, arms folded, eyes tired. "It's not what you think. You said that every single time, and it's always worse than I imagined." His voice broke. "I didn't want you to find out this way, but I guess I owe you the full truth." I narrowed my eyes. "Then talk." He ran a hand through his hair and started pacing like a caged animal. "Samantha got pregnant right before we broke up. She didn't tell me until after she moved to Chicago. When she finally did, she said she didn't want me involved. Said it was better to raise the baby on her own." My jaw clenched. "She miscarried. Late term. It messed her up. She started therapy, moved back here, and then she called me." I stared at him. "And you decided to what? Rebuild your life together?" "It wasn't like that. I didn't love her, not anymore. But I felt responsible. She didn't have anyone else, and she said this house could be a reset. She'd renovate, I'd fund it, and we'd sell it when it was done. Clean break." I scoffed. "You forgot the part where you moved me in and kept her on speed dial." His face twisted. "I didn't know how to separate the two. You and her. I tried to keep them from overlapping. You failed." I turned toward the living room, where the fireplace still flickered. The shadows danced on the walls like ghosts of the lies he buried here. "I saw you at the other house, Nate. You kissed her." His mouth opened. No words came. "So don't pretend this was some charitable act. You were planning a future with her, and you brought me in as what? A distraction? A cover?" He swallowed hard.
No.
Lauren, I love you. I didn't know how to end what I started. And then you loved the house. I saw the way your face lit up when we moved in. I thought maybe this could still work." I shook my head slowly, tears burning behind my eyes. "You thought what? That I'd never find the pink lipstick? The crib? The burner phone?" At that, his eyes snapped up. "You went through my stuff?" I laughed. "You locked me in a basement, and you're mad I invaded your privacy?" We stared at each other. Two strangers standing in the ruins of a life neither of us fully understood anymore. Then something in him changed. He stepped forward, voice suddenly low and calm. "You're not going to tell anyone about this, Lauren. You're not going to ruin this deal." "What deal?" He hesitated. "The other house. Samantha's staying in it until escrow closes." Then we sell both, and I walk away.
Clean.
We get a fresh start. You think I want a fresh start with you?
He ignored me.
If this blows up now, we lose both properties. I'll be liable for everything. And so will you, because your name is on this deed. That stopped me cold.
No.
It's not. I never signed. You did. The day we closed. I said it was a utilities form. You signed it. My stomach flipped. You forged my signature. No, he said calmly, you signed it. You just didn't read it. My hands began to tremble. That's fraud, Nate. It's business. And now you're part of it, whether you like it or not. I backed away slowly. My mind raced. I needed air. I needed to leave. But he stepped in front of me. Where are you going?
Out.
He blocked the door. You'll tell someone. Move. Lauren, listen. This doesn't have to get messy. That's when I screamed. Not words. Just a raw, primal scream that shook the walls and startled even him. He flinched, just enough for me to rush past and slam out the front door barefoot into the cold night. I ran to the car, heart pounding, fumbled with the keys.
Got in.
I didn't drive to the police station. I drove to Samantha's other house. I needed the rest of the truth. She opened the door in a robe.
Surprised.
Then wary. You know. Yes. She let me in without a word. The house was staged like a showroom. Fake plants. New furniture. A stack of real estate brochures on the counter. Is it all true? I asked. She nodded. We were never supposed to live here. It was a flip. I convinced Nate to buy it. Said we'd split the profits. Then he married you. I thought it was over, until he said you liked the place. I blinked. He said I liked it? She looked at me, dead in the eyes. He never mentioned you. Not once. Until after you moved in. We sat in silence. Then I asked the question I dreaded most. Did you ever lose the baby? She looked away.
Yes.
But not when I told him.
I
lied. I thought it would keep him close. I stood up slowly. My hands were ice. My stomach twisted in knots. All of it, every single piece, was built on lies. The sun rose pale and hesitant the next morning. Light filtered through the blinds of my friend Rachel's guest bedroom, catching dust in the air like ghosts. I hadn't slept. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering when the walls of my life had started to crack, and how I hadn't noticed the collapse until I was already buried beneath the rubble. My phone buzzed. I didn't move. Missed call, Nate. Voicemail, unchecked. Text, please come home. We can still fix this. Home. What a funny word. I wasn't even sure where that was anymore. Rachel knocked gently, balancing a mug of coffee in one hand and worry in her eyes. He called again, she asked. I nodded, taking the mug but not drinking. She sat beside me, silent for a moment, then said, What are you going to do? I don't know. I really didn't. Part of me wanted to torch everything, file charges, go public, tear him down brick by brick. But another part, the part that still remembered how he smiled when he saw me in that house for the first time, that part wanted to crawl back into denial and pretend it was all a nightmare. Later that day, I met with a real estate lawyer. His name was David Marcus. Crisp suit, sharper mind. He glanced through the documents Nate had tricked me into signing. This, he said, tapping a paper with his pen, is going to get messy. Can I get out of it? I asked, hoping. He sighed. Yes, but it'll take time. And you'll need to prove you were misled, manipulated, maybe even emotionally coerced. It's not just legal. It's psychological warfare. Can I sue him?
Sure.
But be prepared for countersuits. Property fraud cases between spouses rarely end quietly, especially when there's a third party involved. I nodded slowly. I'll do whatever it takes. He leaned back. This'll be your life for the next year, Lauren. You sure you're ready for that fight? I didn't answer. Not because I wasn't ready, because I didn't know what kind of person I'd become by the time it was over. A week later, I returned to the house. Not to stay, just to pick up the last of my things. Nate wasn't there. The keys still worked. The silence inside was heavier than I remembered. It clung to the walls like humidity. The furniture was untouched. The throw pillows still fluffed. It all felt so artificial, like a fake set for a marriage that had never really existed. I walked slowly to the mantel. The framed photo of our wedding still sat there. But something was different. The frame was cracked, barely noticeable. A small fracture in the corner, like the entire structure had taken a blow. Just like us. I picked it up, looked at it for a long time. Then I threw it into the fireplace. Glass shattered. The photo curled into itself as flames consumed it. I didn't cry. Not even then. The fallout came in waves. Nate called, texted, showed up at Rachel's house once. I didn't answer the door. He left a bouquet and a note. It didn't mean anything with her.
But you?
You are my forever. I never responded. Samantha moved back to Chicago, quietly and without fanfare. The houses both sold eventually, after months of legal arbitration and financial cleanup. Rachel called it emotional arson. I called it survival. Months passed. I got an apartment, small, quiet, just mine. I went back to painting. Not landscapes anymore. Just raw, abstract emotion on canvas.
Rage.
Sadness. Rebirth. People started buying them. My therapist said it was my way of translating trauma into truth. I said it was just paint and pain, but maybe it was both. Then one day I saw him at a grocery store.
Nate.
He looked thinner, older, tired in a way I'd never seen before. Our eyes met briefly near the self-checkout. Neither of us spoke. He gave me a nod. I didn't return it, just walked past and didn't look back. Because that's what you do when you escape something that nearly destroyed you. You don't go back. You don't nod. You reclaim your silence. That night, I stood on my apartment balcony, wine in hand, listening to the city breathe. And I realized, the scariest part wasn't that Nate lied. It was that I was ready to believe it all, just for the fantasy of a future I never actually had.
But now?
Now I believed in something real. Myself. My survival. My story. And this was only the beginning.